CAA Football 12 Teams in 12 Days series presented by Geico returns yet again. I'm Bobby Broyles, joined by my friend Tim McDonald. Today we break down the Towson Tigers, and it was a tough season for TU in 2014 after having to replace numerous key players that led the program to the national title game the year before. Probably the most positive takeaway was a solid season from running back Darius Victor, taking over for the departed Terrence West.
Yeah, it was a new-look Towson offense, and part of the I don't want to say problem, but part of the issue that Towson had last year was they had to rely so much on Darius Victor. Now, it was his first year as a starter, as a sophomore starter for that team. Led the CAA in rushing, had a phenomenal year, scored 12 touchdowns. But again, you look at one of the biggest weaknesses that Towson had, we'll get into the schedule a little bit here, but was the passing offense. Last in the CAA, 116th in the FCS, 131.8 yards per game. That's just a struggle. And we saw Connor Frazier, another first-year starter, really struggled at times. 9 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, Bob, only averaged 124 yards passing. So again, not throwing it all on the offense and its limited ability to produce passing yards, but when you have to rely on a running back like Darius Victor that much, he's going to get his yards, but it might not pay dividends. You look at this team heading into the new year. Yeah, it's easy to say, okay, Towson going back to its old ways, but no, I wouldn't say so fast. They had to replace a lot of starters, especially on the offensive line. We saw that was a huge thing for them. It took a while for that Towson team last year to get used to it. 3 of those guys on the offensive line last year were sophomores. 1 was a true freshman. You have to think the experience is going to pay dividends this year. For Connor Frazier, this is a huge season for him. He's a redshirt senior coming in. He's going to have Brian Dowling back. He's going to have Andre Dessenberg back for wide receivers. Again, I think this Towson team, we're used to them being physical on offense. I think they're going to get back to that, but it's going to start with the passing game. They need to improve there.
Indeed it will. We caught up with Towson head coach Rob Ambrose at Media Day and talked about his star running back.
Consistency, and probably improved consistency. To have the kind of statistics that he had last year with an offensive line that was really taped together with string and toothpicks, and he still found a way to get those yards and have that success. With a year of strength and experience and depth at the offensive line, I can't see him being anything but better.
Like we said earlier, Tim, it was a different season for the Tigers in 2014. Actually, it was their first losing season since 2010, which really shows how far Rob Ambrose has turned this program around since he first arrived. So what do the Tigers have to do in 2015 to get back to their winning ways?
Well, the answer would be simple. Well, they just have to be a little bit more consistent. But I think, look at how last season started. That's a team that went to the national title the year before, played North Dakota State, the Giants of North Dakota State, and come back, and all of a sudden, Towson's first 4 games last year defined them. You lose to Central Connecticut State at home in a game on paper that they should have won, lost at West Virginia, that's understandable, come back home, win 2 non-conference games, get back to 500, but you lose 2 games to Maine and then to Stony Brook. So all of a sudden, it's 4 losses in the first month of the season, where the year before, you had 2 losses the whole regular season. Yeah. So if you're Towson, I think it's going to, we talked about the offense needing to improve, but it's also, you have to look at the youth that they had on defense last year. We've seen a guy, who hasn't played in 2 seasons, Brighton Barr. He's missed it with injury. He's a linebacker who started as a true freshman in 2012. He's a co-captain again, Bob, and we haven't seen, he's a difference maker. We haven't seen him on the field in the last 2 years. Just looking at their defense, James Sims, he was a true freshman last year, 99 tackles. Eric Handy is back at the linebacker position, so they should have some depth. Donnell Lewis is a guy in the secondary. So again, when I think of this Towson D, a couple years back, you think of a Towson defense that isn't scared, and you think of a Towson defense that is very physical. I think they're starting to get back to their ways, but again, they're going to need to improve a little bit, but Towson, I think, can definitely have the depth on defense to make some improvements.
Yeah, and they definitely going to have to fill in 2 glaring holes with Ty Smith and Ryan Delaire departing. Both guys having great camps apparently right now in the NFL. Once again, here is Coach Ambrose on what it will take for the Tigers to get back to the postseason in 2015.
We have to be healthier, obviously. The good news is that because of the injuries, we have tons of guys that are war-tested, that have been in battle, that have seen what it takes to be successful. And this has probably been one of our most productive off-seasons since I've been back. And as far as what is it going to take to get back, it's an upped degree of focus by our guys, a little bit of anger, and the addition of some new teammates, and not just players in the locker room, but fans, students, and community members supporting us along the way. But it's not a goal, it's an eventuality.
Taking a look at the Towson schedule, Tim, a pair of big games in October stand out with the Tigers taking on the CAA preseason favorites. JMU comes to town on October the 10th for a showdown on Comcast Sportsnet. Then later in the month on October 24th, Villanova will make the quick trip south for a game that will be shown on ASN.
I actually really like Towson's schedule this year, especially in the non-conference portion. We look at their first game of the season at ECU, which obviously is going to be a tough game, but ECU did lose, a record-holding quarterback, and Justin Hardy, the wide receiver, who's the all-time FBS leader in receptions. Then they come home, St. Francis and Holy Cross, winnable games. Then they have at Elon to close out the first month of the season. So really, Towson last year, like I said, those games really got built up. They started losing a couple of games, and I think it really took a mental effect on their team. This year, I think that first month it's going to be absolutely key, because then you look into October, and it's so hard to not look ahead when you have JMU, Nova, and Delaware all at home, which is good news, but you also have to play at Stony Brook. Jumping right into the fire here in CAA football play in the month of October. The month of October for Towson, like it has in the past, is going to define this team moving forward. You look compared to some of the teams that they play in the last month of the season, it's a lot better than that meat of the schedule, which is in the middle. It's going to be tough, but I think it's also going to define this team.
Should be fun for the home crowd there in October. A lot of big teams coming in.
We'll be there. I think we'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get more on that later in later shows. Yep. The Tigers open their season, like you said, on the road at East Carolina out of the American Athletic Conference. That game can be seen live on Saturday, September the 5th at 6 p.m. on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
During Media Day in July, we spoke with a couple of TU players, and Darius Victor and John Desir. You can check out their features now on CAA Football's Everyday Saturday blog, caafootball.wordpress.com.
The first week of 12 teams in 12 days wraps up on Friday with the Stony Brook Seawolves. For Tim McDonald, I'm Bobby Broyles. See you tomorrow.